All right, and back for another edition of Plus Money Picks. This week we have UFC Vegas 36. The main event is Darren Till and Derek Brunson. Just going over last week, it was a difficult card, not the worst one betting, but not a profitable night. It started off with Mana Martinez. That fight going the distance didn't help me. I was on Mana Martinez by knockout and that fight doesn't go the distance. I think I might have even taken the under 1.5. Then I was on Jamal Emmers, and just him following Sabatini to the ground ended up being a mistake. Was right about how that Aldrich fight would go. I thought she would dominate that one. I was on Dustin Jacoby, but just had him in parlays, and those ended up crashing. Thought that Alvy Turman would not go the distance, which I think if they played it out a little different, one of them could have finished it. Then I was really high on Di Chirico given his style and not ever being finished, but Razak Al-Hassan just came in there with a kick out of nowhere and dropped him. But pretty happy for Al-Hassan there because he needed a win. Then I think this is where everyone's night fell apart. Muradov getting submitted by Mearshart, which if you were on Mearshart, that was the way to go, was to bet him by submission. So I bet a lot of people still cashed some big tickets on that. What did help me a lot was I did that Ultimate Fighter parlay and basically just took the favorites because I thought they were all deserving favorites in that one. So took Petrosky, which that fight I think surprised a lot of people in that it actually made it to the third round. Following that, I had picked Daniel Rodriguez, and not only had I picked him, but I put a small play on him by decision, which was plus 425. So that helped me. And then Ricky Tercios winning the split decision over High Stand. Happy for Ricky there. And then Brian Battle pulling that one out. So then that closed out my Ultimate Fighter parlay. And then what capped off the night in a bad note was I was pretty high on Edson Barboza in that one, but Giga Chikadze once again screwed me over. So I got to stop fading Giga Chikadze. So lessons learned, and we're going into this week with a different mindset. So first fight of this card, we have Jonathan Martinez and Marcelo Rojo, which is a dangerous one given Martinez' recent fight. I think just the fact that he's shown he can get finished is kind of dangerous in this one. So Marcelo Rojo, he is 16-7, and Jonathan Martinez is 13-4. Martinez has struggled with making weight before, and this is Rojo coming back down to 135, and I believe he's even struggled to make 135 before. So this honestly could even be one that you wait to bet until weigh-ins. I think that would be smart, but I'm just not very high on Rojo, so that's why I decided to take a bet somewhat early. So looking at Rojo, he didn't show great striking defense in his last fight, but that was technically a weight class up for him. He's been finished 5 times, but 4 of those are by submission. He doesn't really seem to have great takedown defense. And then another red flag is he's 33, but just got into the UFC. And if you're looking at, he could win by submission, his sub wins are to low level or to people that are just prone to submissions in general. But on a positive note, he does have power and he can throw volume. So I think if you're on him, you're looking at that being his path to victory. And maybe catching a sub on Martinez, but I just don't see it being that likely. So for Martinez, he actually has decent volume. He's definitely faced better strikers. He's still young and improving. And I think he's a little bit more patient with his strikes, whereas Rojo wants to just come forward and try to knock you out. But Martinez, he's only okay defensively. And like I said, he's kind of struggled with weight cuts, and I think that affects his performance sometimes. And he's only been knocked out once technically, but he has been knocked down multiple times in a fight before against Andrei Sukumtat. But yeah, and really even when he was knocked out, he had almost finished Davey Grant too. So that fight could have ended up going in a different direction. So I just think Jonathan Martinez is the smart side to bet on this one. But I could see someone making a play on Rojo given Martinez's last fight. And then currently, so I got Jonathan Martinez at minus 157 because I thought that the line would only get more wide, and it actually has Currently, Jonathan Martinez is minus 170 on BetOnline, and Marcelo Rojo is coming back at plus 145. So then we'll move up in the card, and we have Dolce Lungambula versus Marc-Andre Barriault. And this is another really interesting one. It's just however you feel that you want to depend on the fighter, because Lungambula, I mean, he has the power advantage here, but then Marc-Andre Barriault definitely has the volume advantage and cardio advantage, I believe. Dolce Lungambula is at 11. He's 11-2, and Barriault is 12-4. Lungambula is actually going to have a slight reach advantage, even though he's a few inches shorter. He just has really long arms. He has a 76-inch reach, while Marc-Andre Barriault has a 73-inch reach. So things that I liked about Barriault when I was looking into this, he's never been finished. He has 72% takedown defense, and I think that he's going to really have to strengthen up his takedown defense in this one. But he's only 1-3-1 in the UFC. But another thing I liked was that he put up 141 significant strikes versus a Zaitar, and he really weaponized his cardio in that one and kind of just outlasted him. And he's always been a 185, whereas Lungambula is a guy that's been dropping down a lot, and I think that's affecting his cardio. And I think Barriault, as long as he seems to like using the clinch, but I think he should avoid it a bit more in this one, because that's where Lungambula wants to be. He wants to waste time on the cage, and then if he gets a takedown, he's not really all that active. Once he has you down, he really just wants to waste time there, it seems like. So like I said, Lungambula is going to have the reach advantage in this one, but he's been really low volume so far. And his UFC wins aren't really good. If he gets taken down, Ankalaev was easily able to hold him down for a while. And really in that Ankalaev fight, even though it didn't go the distance, still only landing 6 significant strikes when it got into the third round. I'm not going to depend on a guy that is that low volume. I do think Lungambula is dangerous, so I think you're only betting him inside the distance, unless you have confidence that Lungambula is going to get takedowns in this one. But I like what I see out of Marc-Andre Barriault for this matchup, at least. I don't know how much I would really bet him going forward. But I haven't really placed a whole lot of bets for this card, and I haven't bet Barriault yet. But currently he's minus 155 and Lungambula is plus 135. And I think I'm just going to wait this one out and see how the odds change, because last I checked on Tapology, people were way more on the Lungambula side. So I think that this line could close a little bit. So then we'll move up in the card once again. Yeah, then this one is a difficult one. We have Charles Jourdain and Julian Erosa. And then one thing that people might not really notice is this is going to be at a catch weight of 150. I think maybe just because of the short notice aspect for Erosa. Charles Jourdain is 11-3-1, and Julian Erosa is 25-9. And as far as how they match up, so Julian Erosa, he's going to be quite a bit older. He's 32, while Charles Jourdain isn't even quite 26. Height, Julian Erosa, like he usually is, he's going to be the taller guy in this one. He's got about 4 inches of height, and then he's got a little over 5 inches of a reach advantage. And that was one of the things that I kind of struggled with as far as making a bet, because Charles Jourdain in the UFC at least has kind of struggled against guys that have this type of reach. Andre Fili, Kulabau, those guys were all able to kind of land power shots on him. And he just seemed to struggle with guys that have a significant reach advantage with him. And then Jourdain, at least like a takedown defense percentage-wise, he doesn't have a very good takedown defense. And he's never been finished, but he has been rocked. I think he's shown that it's possible to finish him. But then he is a really good finisher. He's finished all of his wins. He has 8 knockouts and 3 submissions. And then just the fact that he's young, I think he is rapidly improving, and he's kind of been showing it. He has been showing it in his fights. I know he's had slip-ups, but I think he's still showing that he's evolving as a fighter. Arosa, what really had kept me off of just betting him, even when I saw him at plus 170 in a matchup that I thought could be close, was he just got knocked out like only a few months ago. And he's high volume, but he just doesn't defend himself very well. And I think when he's facing a finisher like this, that's just too dangerous. He has 6 TKO or KO losses in his career, which is just never something you want to see. I feel like even once you kind of get in that territory of 3 or 4, you could kind of start to question someone's chin just from the damage it's taken. And he's been KO'd by people with like this similar reach if we're looking at patterns with opponents. But Arosa himself, he's a finisher too. He's got 22 of his 25 wins by finish, and those are split between knockouts and subs. And yeah, I mean, his main advantage in this is just his size. So I ended up looking into it a bit more. And yeah, I think if Arosa was going to edge out a decision, a lot of his UFC decisions happen when there's kind of takedowns going on both sides. And I think Jourdain's going to keep this on the feet. He was preparing for Lerone Murphy, so I think he was ready for an even more powerful takedown artist. Because Lerone Murphy, I think, is a lot stronger. And yeah, so I think Jourdain should be prepared for this one, and I think he should handle Arosa just fine. But I didn't like Jourdain's straight money line, so I ended up putting a smaller bet on Jourdain inside the distance, which actually gets you plus money. Because currently, Jourdain had gotten all the way up to minus 200, but right now he's minus 185, and Arosa is plus 160. So I wouldn't hate the underdog play on Arosa, but I think you could take Jourdain, and if you didn't like the money line, then go for some kind of prop bet on him by knockout or just inside the distance. Okay. So then when we move up, we have Jack Shore versus Ludwig Sholinian, which seems like by the end of this week, Jack Shore might have a different opponent because this has been switching up over and over. So this fight will be happening at 135. Sholinian, you might recognize from The Ultimate Fighter. He made it to the semis. And Jack Shore's been tearing through UFC competition. And he's still 14-0. Ludwig Sholinian is 9-1-1. Sholinian will actually be the older fighter in this one. And then we don't have a reach on Sholinian, but Sholinian will be a couple inches taller. So looking at this one, everyone knows that Jack Shore is a great grappler. He's gotten 3+ takedowns in all of his UFC fights so far. But really, Hunter Azure was the only one that should have been difficult to take down out of all of those opponents. Jack Shore is definitely going to have the better cardio in this one, and I think the better striking. Sholinian is a strong grappler as well, but that's kind of all he has. He does have some decent wins, and he has shown that he could go to decision in his previous fights, but then when you watch him on The Ultimate Fighter, his cardio was not great, and especially if he was behind in the fight, he just started kind of cracking, and he doesn't really have advanced striking. So in his semifinal fight, he was kind of just, I don't know, a standing punching bag. So that's why I'm not going to take him on such short notice against a guy like Jack Shore. I think Jack Shore could handle him just fine, and there's not really much complication behind that, which is why Jack Shore currently, he is minus 500 and Sholinian is plus 375. And I think, especially if you watched The Ultimate Fighter, you can get why the odds are like that. So I think Jack Shore, he's parlayable in this one. I don't really see a good path to victory for Ludwig Sholinian, but as far as a grappling match, this should be pretty interesting. So, moving on in the card, we have Jeon Kim versus Molly McCann, which is what everyone's saying is a matchup that nobody asked for. This one is really even on the money line. Currently, both of them are minus 110. They're actually both about the same age, but McCann is a few inches shorter, and she's going to have about a 10-inch reach disadvantage, which was almost why I was going to go with Jeon Kim. But then you watch the fights, and honestly, even listening to how other people are approaching this fight, I think everyone's kind of on point with thinking that it's actually more likely that McCann pulls this off. Jeon Kim, on paper, she's high volume. And yeah, at first I feel like that's why I was leaning towards her. It's because she puts out decent volume and she's going to have such a significant reach advantage. But she also only has a 42% takedown defense. She herself has no takedowns in the UFC. Two of her 3 wins are by split decision. She doesn't really have any impressive wins in the UFC. And then even though she's high volume, she has a slightly negative striking differential, which is not ever really something that you like to see if you're going to bet on a fighter. But she is the more natural flyweight, and she can take damage throughout a fight and keep going. And Molly McCann, despite her size disadvantage in this one and the fact that this will be her first fight, I believe, at 125, she herself is pretty high volume. She has good striking defense. She has 65% striking defense. So I think that there is a path for her to get inside that reach and tag Jeon Kim. And she's more likely to go for a takedown. McCann herself has a 28% takedown defense, but like I said, Jeon Kim has no takedowns in the UFC, and I don't even know if she's really attempted any. I don't expect her to have that great of a ground game. So yeah, I could see people holding off from this one just because of the size disadvantage and the fact that Jeon Kim, sometimes she can land with power. But I think McCann has more skills here and more paths to victory. And so I think you could take her by decision in this one. And this, I mean, it's the most closely aligned fight in the whole card. So maybe you take a play on it, but yeah, it's not the most interesting fight. Especially because following that, we have Luigi Vendramini versus Paddy Pimblett. This will be Pimblett's UFC debut. And I think this is a pretty rough matchup for him, honestly. I think Vendramini's kind of underrated in this one. We don't have a reach on Pimblett, but he's 2 inches taller. And Vendramini, he's 5'8", 73 inches of reach. It's going to be Pimblett with more experience overall. Vendramini is only 9-2, and Pimblett is 16-3, but Vendramini actually has a few UFC fights, so you like to see that he has UFC experience. I mean, some of the wins on Pimblett's record aren't all that impressive because he's just still been on Cage Warriors. But with Pimblett, we have a guy that has 12 of his 16 wins by finish, which is impressive. 7 submissions, 5 knockouts. He is really tricky on the ground, and although some of his takedowns aren't pretty, he usually does find a way to get it to the ground. But sometimes he kind of rolls around too much, ends up getting reversed. He has had 5-round fights before. I do like seeing that, so I think his cardio should be just fine. Yeah, I think he may struggle with high-level striking. I think Vendramini may have the better striking in this one. He definitely has more explosive striking. And I think eventually down the line, Pimblett might kind of struggle with someone with smoother grappling, as in more like a traditional wrestling background that could kind of just hold him down and not offer too many opportunities for submissions. Pimblett's also someone that spent time at 145, whereas Vendramini, he's a straight-up lightweight. But with that being said, Pimblett's definitely someone that the UFC is trying to promote. He's someone with a really big personality, and I think if he does win at least a few fights, he's going to be good for the UFC, especially with expanding into more of the European realm. But yeah, I'm just really not discounting Vendramini in this one because he's pretty strong at 155. Like I said, he's got the explosive striking. He pretty much just lost his last fight by being outpointed by a much taller and longer guy. And really, like, his third round was the most impressive in that fight, which I think is a good sign for, an underdog that you're trying to back, that shows that he'll keep fighting no matter how bad he's down. And he's a finisher himself, has 9 wins by finish, 5 knockouts, and 4 submissions. And he's got decent jiu-jitsu himself. But he's typically someone that finishes fights early, and so I don't know if this fight gets extended, maybe that really does start favoring Pimblett because of his experience with championship fights and everything. So I think this is a spot that Pimlet is the deserving favorite given his background and everything. But Vendramini's definitely not the worst underdog on this one. So I haven't really made an official play on this at all, just because I do think it's a lot closer than people would expect. But yeah, I'll say that Pimlet takes this one, possibly even just by decision, because I think he could impress judges. And then, like I was saying, with this fight being pretty closely lined right now, Pimlet, actually the line just widened a little bit. He's minus 150 and Vendramini is plus 130, but I've seen Pimlet hover more around the minus 140 range for most of this fight, being out with odds. So then when we move up in the card, we have Khalil Roundtree and Modestas Bukauskas, which is a fight that's pretty difficult to choose a side, just given Khalil Roundtree's most recent fights. He's coming off of 2 losses, and same for Bukauskas. But there is an argument that he beat Michael Oleksiejczuk. It's a split decision. Definitely not a robbery or anything, but it was a close fight. Bukauskas will have the reach advantage in this one. He'll have about 4 inches of reach and a couple inches in height. He'll be a bit younger, not even 28, whereas Khalil Roundtree is 31, but he's been in the UFC for a while and had really mixed results so far in the UFC. He did have a knockout win over Gokhan Saki and a decision win over Eric Anders, where that fight could have been stopped because he knocked down Eric Anders 4 times and was dominating from start to end in that fight. But he's also been knocked out by Johnny Walker, who has been another mixed results fighter in the UFC. He got knocked out by Kudalaba, and then he got dominated, at least by numbers, with Marcin Prachnio, who everyone knows isn't the best UFC fighter. So it's difficult to really back Khalil Roundtree in this one. He has a negative striking differential, and when it comes to takedowns too, he's only got a 50% takedown defense. And his last performance is really something that made me not want to really bet him anymore. Bukauskas, like I said, also on a 2-fight skid, but has kind of looked better in that 2-fight skid. He's defended all takedowns against him so far, so you like to see that. And I think he's the more likely one to go for takedowns in this one. I think that is a path to mess with Roundtree, and at least to just kind of throw him off of his striking game. Because in that Anders performance, he did look pretty clean on the feet. So there's just multiple versions of Roundtree, which makes it difficult to bet him. So I think the more safe bet is Bukauskas. You at least won't feel like you're getting burned, I think, as much. But yeah, I haven't bet this yet. I would kind of think that if Bukauskas wins, I could kind of see it being more of a decision, actually. So yeah, that's my pick, but there's not really any play here. I think you could, if you didn't want to pick a side, you could technically go for fight doesn't go the distance, because both these guys do have finishing power. But yeah, it's just not one that I would highly recommend anyone touching. Bukauskas currently minus 152, and Roundtree is plus 132. I'd be kind of more into betting this if it was closer to evens, to be honest, because I think it should be kind of more of a pick 'em. We won't spend any more time on that fight. We'll just move up in the card. Following Roundtree, Bukauskas, we have Alex Morono versus David Zawada. And I think this fight could end up playing out a lot more closely than what a lot of people would say. Just Zawada is a pretty tricky guy. So look into the notes that I have for this one. So Zawada, with being tricky, he still does have a negative striking differential. And he's 1-3 in the UFC, but he's got 2 split decision losses. And one of them was to Ramazan Ameev, I think. And yeah, it was a pretty close fight. And Zawada showed a decent amount of promise, I think, in that one. But what threw him off was he doesn't really have a great takedown defense. He has a 57% takedown defense. But he will have a 3-inch reach advantage in this one, and he is someone that could work well off his back. So I think even if Morono ended up getting it to the ground, Zawada is still going to be pretty active. Zawada does have 15 finish wins, and out of those 15, 4 of them are by submission, 11 knockouts. So then when we go to the Morono side, Morono, he's 8-4-1 in the UFC, which is not too bad of a record. He has 5.05 significant strikes landed per minute versus 3.69 significant strikes absorbed per minute. So I like seeing that kind of differential and just that kind of output. And he's been more active in the UFC. He fights pretty regularly. But he doesn't really get a lot of takedowns himself. I kind of wanted to see higher numbers in his takedowns. And he is somewhat inconsistent, to be honest, too. Like he had his impressive win over Griffin, but then the Reese McKee fight there's moments of it that were a little closer than I would have wanted. And he did lose to Pettis at 170. And if you've been following how Pettis has been doing in the PFL, you kind of know that Pettis just isn't quite there anymore. So losing to him, I think, doesn't look great. But then he comes back with knocking out Cerrone pretty dominantly. It's kind of hard to get a read on Morono. But I do think he should edge this one out. If Zawada does come out takedown heavy, I guess maybe that could be another thing, but I don't really expect it. But if that does happen, Morono himself doesn't have that great of takedown defense. He only has a 52% takedown defense. So, I think this one could end up being pretty close, but I think Alex Morono definitely is the right side in this one. And I ended up betting Morono at -137 because I kind of figured that would be about the best line I'm going to get on him. And right after I bet him at that line, it widened again to currently he's -142, but I had seen him get as high as about like -155. I think this is a spot where Morono could edge out a decision, but I'm not really expecting this to be domination on either side. So then next in the card, we have the co-main event with Tom Aspinall and Sergey Spivak, which could be another really interesting fight, to be honest, just given what we know about each guy. Aspinall hasn't been in the UFC all that long, but he does have a pretty insane volume. I think he lands somewhere around 7 significant strikes per minute, so that's really high volume. He's finished all 3 of his UFC wins, with the most impressive one being Andrei Arlovski in his most recent fight. And that one was just surprising because, that was just really smart on his part to go for a quick sub because Arlovski clearly wasn't expecting it. Aspinall, of course, has great boxing and really quick hands. And he only has one finished loss, which was a submission. And Spivak does have some submission wins on his record. But Spivak himself has been knocked out before by Walt Harris. So he has, Walt Harris can at least rock a lot of heavyweights in the UFC. So there's not a ton of shame in that, but at least showed that it's possible to take out Spivak. And Spivak, he's much lower output, of course, than Aspinall because it's pretty hard to compete with 7 significant strikes landed per minute. And some of that is because he's capable of getting takedowns and kind of just smothering people. Spivak's not too bad, overall defense-wise. And, he only really does have that one finished loss. So he's not really someone that looks too bad, and I feel like that's why I don't necessarily even think that the line makes that much sense. Currently, Spivak is a +210 underdog, while Tom Aspinall is coming out at -250, and that line has looked worse at different points of this week. I think Aspinall has looked good enough that you should back Aspinall in this one. And just given his history so far in the UFC and in his career, I don't see why he wouldn't take him inside the distance. But Spivak could be a really tough test, and I think especially if Spivak starts getting takedowns early and really starts draining on the gas tank of Aspinall, we haven't really seen that, how that affects him with high-level opponents. So, honestly would not even hate too much the dog shot on Spivak, but I'll take Aspinall in this one. And so far, I just have him in my low confidence parlay where I kind of just choose who I think will win in most of the fights, where I put a small unit amount, and it just has a big payout if it cashes. So I haven't really made any straight up plays with Aspinall yet. and might just see how this goes. I think this could be, if Aspinall wins, it's another one of those times where this might be the best odds you get on him for a while. But yeah, tough test for an early UFC fighter, and we'll see how it goes. So then that brings us to Brunson and Till, the main event. So I was actually surprised in this one. Derek Brunson has a reach advantage. He has like 2 to 3 inches of reach on Darren Till. Brunson is coming off of a 4-fight winning streak. Not that all of those wins are all that impressive, but still there were some times that he was the underdog and he actually came through. But things that I didn't like looking at Brunson, he of course has 5 knockout losses, with 2 of them being to Jacare Souza. He didn't look great in extended striking exchanges with Kevin Holland in his recent fight. And in that fight, he didn't really face much resistance in the takedowns from Kevin Holland, but it seemed like, by the end of that fight, he was still pretty drained. And it wasn't really all that impressive when I watched it again. I think at the time when he was the underdog and he was pulling all that off, I think he was still the underdog against Holland, at least when that line had opened originally. But yeah, I mean, that's Brunson's experience with 5 rounds, and I think when I was looking at how he's going to match up with Till, it just didn't end up really looking all that good to me. Brunson is 37, so I feel like if he loses to Till and then even takes like one more loss, he's going to be fading out of the UFC pretty quickly. Till, he's already gone 5 rounds before, and it was against Robert Whittaker and Stephen Thompson. So I think those are way better 5-round fights to have experience-wise, especially because Darren Till, he's 28, and at this point has fought top competition. And then, the fact that some of those top competitors he got to go 5 rounds with, it just means a lot. And Brunson's one path to victory is his takedowns, and Darren Till has an 82% takedown defense, and I think, even the takedowns that he's going to give up, he's going to make them work. And Kevin Holland kind of just played around in guard and, even kind of like body locked off bottom and just held Brunson on top of him, whereas Darren Till is going to be pushing away. He's going to be attacking. He's going to be doing a lot more, I think. When you look at his 5-rounder with Whittaker, he gave up 2 takedowns to Whittaker, and at first that looked like, oh no, that's not good, because it's not like Whittaker's, only wrestling, but Whittaker actually attempted 13 takedowns in that fight, so only giving up 2 actually is pretty impressive, and I think Darren Till's more prone to give up takedowns in matchups like that, where he has to really worry about the striking, and I just don't think he has to worry about Brunson striking as much, besides, maybe that one power shot, but I think Darren Till can handle someone like that. Darren Till, he has been knocked out before, but that was at 170, and we know that that's a pretty rough weight cut for him. And even at 185, he looks huge, so I think he should match up fine with Derek Brunson. And I kind of realized too that if I'm thinking that the fight's going to play out that way and that Darren Till is going to be able to keep it on the feet, with Brunson having 5 knockout losses and Darren Till having the power that he has, I think Darren Till can get this done inside the distance. So I ended up making a 2-unit play on Darren Till, and then I actually put a little bit on Darren Till by knockout as well, because I think it is pretty likely that that's how it's going to go down. Darren Till, in his career, he does have a negative striking differential, and he's definitely not known for having that much volume. So I hope he doesn't just run out of time with his output, but I think there's a decent chance that he's methodical and precise enough to land a good shot on Brunson and just tire him out by defending takedowns throughout a championship length fight. That's where I stand with my picks this week. Short fight card, so I think that's gonna kind of limit opportunities for people to make decent money. So you got to be really educated on your picks and really listen in on everyone's opinions. Good luck to everyone out there with their picks this week, and see everyone in a couple of weeks for what's our next one? We have UFC Vegas 37. We'll have Anthony Smith versus Ryan Spann, and that that actually is, as of right now, a pretty heavy card. So just with the amount of spots that there are in that one right now, a lot of close line fights that people could get on. That should be a good one as well. And yeah, see everyone then, and good luck this week.